I think that's probably relevant to at least us here in Australia at the moment. We're getting locked down left, right, and centre for a week or 2 weeks. Like it's on and off. And I experienced this just last lockdown. We had, I think, about 2 weeks out of the pool, came back and just didn't really give it much thought. Like I just went back to the same intensity that I was doing prior to that. And like, I'm feeling it in my shoulders. Just went a little bit too hard too early. And that was from just 2 weeks off. So what's the answer there? What's the solution for, how do you avoid those injuries when you do take that bit of time out of the water?
Yeah, and we would all recognize that there needs to be a psychological refresh at some point. So the tapering and recovery experts all agree there has to be a down phase in the season or the calendar year. So if we make peace with it's not bad for someone to have a break, but as you say, there are key things to be mindful of on the return. And one is it's a progressive return to training workload. So we try and avoid the rules of twos, the rules being too hard, too quick, too soon, too much. I think we come back from an off season either really pumped up to get into it or sometimes a little bit like I could have had longer off. But typically, I think most athletes are pretty motivated, so they come back ready to get into it and have their best season ever. Either they're building on a good year or they're trying to redeem themselves from a season that didn't go well, right? So that's one consideration, is just being aware of progressively increasing your workload. If it's running related, if it's running specific injuries we're trying to minimize, Brenton, we know that it's the magnitude of bone load that's more important than the number of loading cycles in the risk of bone stress injury development. So how that practically might look is an athlete returns to running, a triathlete, for example, after some time off, restore the volume, the minutes of training for the running, say it's 5 hours a week or 8 or 10 hours, whatever it may be, 3 hours, before that athlete starts to add intensity, because it's the magnitude of bone load, which is a function of the speed of running, that is the greater risk for a bone stress injury. So that's a key principle that athletes should be trying to not violate. And the other part of trying to minimize injuries on return from an off season would be the tissue capacity of our bodies. So when we have a break, it down regulates. We do get deconditioning locally and more globally. So as the workload's increasing, the body's tissue's capacity, which you can think of in very simple terms as the strength, if you like, of the body or the tissues, needs to be increasing as well. So that's a progressive attempt to be doing some strength and conditioning work. Now that can be as simple as poolside work for a swimming athlete, gym work for any endurance athlete, home programs. There's lots of ways to skin that cat, but we need to remember as the workload increases, our tissue capacity needs to keep pace with it. And normally with these injuries, these overuse injuries, it's as simple as the workload exceeded the tissue capacity.